There's no point to longevity if you're not having a great life. Let's go find a community where there's a lot of 100-year-olds and watch them and see what lessons we can learn. So they go to Sardinia, where all these 100-year-old men live, healthy 100-year-old men. And they wanted to see what lessons we could learn. And they came up with 3. If you don't have enough deep sleep, it's associated with a higher risk for Alzheimer's. When you're not sleeping enough, your body sees that as a stressor. So it releases cortisol. One of cortisol's job is to put on belly fat. I want people to understand the power of these very basic things. And I'll start with food.
Dr. Jonny Bowden is a board-certified nutritionist and nationally renowned expert on weight loss, nutrition, and health. He's the author of 7 critically acclaimed best-selling books, and he's a health columnist for Forbes, a member of the editorial advisory board of Men's Health, and he's been featured everywhere from the New York Times to Us Weekly and many other major media outlets. One of my mentors, especially when it comes to longevity.
Thank you.
You are approaching your 79th birthday as of this recording.
You have to tell everybody that.
I mean, hey.
I'm waiting for 80 because that's going to be the one where they're going to say, now he's the elder statesman of nutrition. And I'm going to start to get those kind of
You're
grades.
already that.
Oh,
You're already that. And with that being said, your level of fitness and activity and health is extraordinary for what would be considered your age bracket. Can you talk a little bit about your lifestyle? Like what does your fitness look like? What are some of the things that you're doing?
I'd be happy to, because it really comes down to longevity. I walk 5 times a week in the hills with the dog, and I play tennis at least 5 times a week, maybe 6, 2 hours a time. And I don't really sit down very much. I mean, I was actually on the phone with BrainMD yesterday, and they were saying, guy was saying, I have such bad knees. Do you have knee problems? And I said, I've never had knee problems or back problems. And I said, I also don't sit down. I'm walking around, even my kitchen, which is about this size, I'll walk around while I'm having phone meetings. I have a standing desk. And I don't think I sit more than a couple hours a day. And I think that makes that, that's a big part of fitness. They say that sitting 8 hours is equivalent to smoking in terms of risk. That might be a slight exaggeration, but there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
Metabolically, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, fidgeting, there's a whole thing. It's called NEAT, non-exercise induced thermogenesis. And that is the little things that we do. And it's responsible for about 10% of our calorie burn. So all that fidgeting and just, stuff, and I do this with my life, that all burns calories. And when we get into the things about longevity, we'll talk about that because I want to make a distinction between exercise and movement.
Yes.
And I think it's a very important distinction.
Yes. Well, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you here, is to learn from the sensei, to learn from the master himself. For you, again, we can talk aspirationally about longevity and the science behind it, and that's great. But you're somebody who's doing this practically and viscerally. And so I wanted to get from you your top tips for longevity, some things that you've learned, again, practically, viscerally, that actually work that we all need to know about.
I would love to share that. And can I give you some context? I told you I'm going to be 80 next year. So I'm getting asked to do a lot of these kind of legacy speeches. I gave a keynote at the National Association of Nutrition Professionals. I'm going to give the graduation commencement speech at the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. So what I've been doing in these talks is kind of, I don't want to say like a wrapping up of my career, but what have I learned? And I've been doing this since I was 38. So we're going on 40 years, 35 years professionally. I started at Equinox in 1990. So that's 35 years that I've been in. And in that time...
I was in elementary school.
You were in elementary school? Yeah, so was my wife. In that time, I have experimented with or tried or learned about or written about just about every diet you can mention. At Equinox, we had kickboxing, we had aerobox, we had step class, we had, high intensity, we had the Peak 10 program, we had everything you can imagine. And what happens, I think, Shawn, when you reach a certain age or a certain stage with it, you start to see more forest and less trees. You start to see what are the big issues? What do we agree on? What basic premises can we kind of put out there as universal, if there are any? And I'm not a big believer in a universal diet or a universal supplementation program. I'm very big into biochemical individuality. That's what I was raised on. I know that everybody is different. Yet, there are some things that we all agree on. And I remember back in the 90s even, they had a big meeting in Washington about diets. And they had four things represented: the Atkins diet, the Dean Ornish and his no-fat diet, and a couple of middle ones in the middle. And of course, they didn't agree on anything, except that they really did. There were a couple of things, not a lot. Everybody agreed that we need fiber. Everybody agreed that sugar was enemy number one, public enemy number one. So there are some things that we can kind of take away from that. And what I've been looking for in the last decade or so, the last 5 years, is what are those things? Because everybody, including professionals, because I educate doctors as well, and I got to tell you, they're just as confused as the public is about nutrition and claims and what works and what doesn't. And this is, everything is the latest this, and they put it up on Instagram and you can't resist buying it. And it's all, and we know 99% of it is marketing. So people are very, very confused. And my goal in the last few years has been like, how can I take my 35 years of experience and kind of condense it into some basic principles that everybody can understand, that are not complicated, that the people at the dinner table, when I'm sitting with my family and they go, what's it? I can tell them and they get it. And that's what I've been looking for. And I made that the topic of my last talk, which was my keynote. And it was interesting, the feedback I got, because half the people said, man, we needed to hear this again. This is the basic stuff. And the other half said, well, we know all that stuff. So when I tell you what I think these core principles are for longevity and health, many people will think, well, we all know that, but you really don't, because then you need to hear it again. And it's not that I may be telling you something you've never heard of or known, but I want people to understand the power of these very basic things. And I'll start with food. So having been a vegetarian and a vegan and a carnivore, and having tried all these diets, and more importantly, having written about all these diets, one of my first books in 2004 was Living Low Carb. I analyzed 38 different diets. By the time the second edition came out, 16 of them didn't even exist anymore. So there, lots of trendy diets, and we look at how they're different and stuff like that, And by the time the fourth edition, which is out now, came, I only had 4 categories of diets. They were all variations on these things. And so I'm looking at what can we learn from all this? Having studied diets, what is the most important advice I could give to people about food? And it's 3 words. And it's going to sound like, well, I knew that. No, but you don't understand the power of what I'm about to tell you. It's 3 words. Eat real food. Now, full stop. People will say, well, what's real food? Is that kale chips? No, that's not kale chips. Kale is real food. Chips are not. Well, is it this? If you're not sure of what it is, take it out. We are talking about food defined as real food in the sense that your great-great-great-great-grandmother, you might have to go back 4 generations, but your great-grandmother would have recognized as food. When they did the Blue Zone study, they took a lot of supermarket food and they brought it to the elders in these different areas of the world where there are 100-year-old people, very large numbers of 100-year-old people living very well. And they showed it to the elders. And you know what they said? What is this? They didn't even know how to cook it. Juice comes in a box. Lunchables come in a package. You put in a microwave. What is this? They know how to cook meat, vegetables, fruits, nuts. So my basic nutrition advice has always been to eat from, I narcissistically call it the Jonny Bowden 4 food groups. Food you could hunt, fish, gather, or pluck. If you could pluck it from a tree, gather it from the ground, hunt it or fish it in another time, it's probably good for you. And that is more important than the macro distribution, than the carb content, than anything you can imagine. If you start with real food, during the pandemic, there was a program called Whole 30. Remember Whole 30? I don't know if it's even still around. It was a 30-day commitment to eat nothing but whole food. They had no restrictions on fat, no restrictions on dairy, no restrictions on anything except, is this a whole food? Would it spoil if you left it outside on the picnic table? And people were reporting incredible results with that. Kelly Brogan, the psychiatrist, has a program where she takes everybody off of medicine and all processed food, and she keeps them on that for a month, and you can't believe the results. So the only thing wrong with Whole30 is they didn't have a follow-up. They did the first 30 days and then they didn't know what to do after. But if you can adopt that premise of just eating food that actually is in its most unprocessed state that you're able to get in real life, it will make a double-digit percentage difference in the quality of your life, and probably if we all did that, it would make a huge difference in the health of America.
Yeah. Thank you for leading off with that, because as you know, better than most, food is what makes us up. We're literally made from food. As I'm looking at you, I'm seeing what you've eaten and vice versa. And it's that powerful, but we're not taught this in our highfalutin educations. I went to a conventional university. I was not taught that when we're studying the cell, we're looking at the food that you've eaten, and we have the power to determine what the makeup of our cells is going to be, what our mitochondria is going to be made of, what our neurons are going to be made of, what our cardiac cells and epicardial fat, and the list goes on and on. We get to choose. And the body, this is the thing, we're experiencing, as you know, this as well, epidemics of chronic diseases.
100%.
Everything that you can name. Now, according to the CDC, their most recent report, 60% of American adults now have at least one chronic disease. 40% have two or more.
It's worse than that. 92% have at least one measure of prediabetes. Mm-hmm. Now, there's more than one to get metabolic. It used to be called metabolic syndrome, syndrome X. Now the World Health Organization calls it cardiometabolic syndrome. And that always starts with insulin resistance. And the things that they usually look at to determine if you qualify to be diagnosed with this is waist size, triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, insulin resistance, abdominal fat. 92% of us have one of those measures, and prediabetes underlies every single chronic disease you can think of. When we had the pandemic and everyone was looking at comorbidities, they're all based on metabolic. So they all have insulin resistance at the core of them. Lung disease, kidney disease, liver disease, hypertension, obesity, heart disease, and Alzheimer's all have insulin resistance there. And insulin resistance, make no mistake, is prediabetes. Yeah. And your doctor says, I think you got prediabetes. He or she is saying, you've got insulin resistance, except most people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And they do know what prediabetes is.
It's exceedingly rare to find prediabetes in real whole food diets as well.
Versus very, very rare.
Versus what we have today, which is the majority of our diet is now ultra processed foods.
Yes,
and so 70%, you're pointing us to
70%.
Number one, eat real food. Of the longevity tenets, number one, eat real food. It's number one for a reason.
Yeah.
And you get to choose this. You get to decide what you're making your body out of.
Yeah.
And I got a little, of course, heads up of what is to come, but you're going to be sharing with us 4 of these pillars of longevity.
That's the first one.
And the first one, kicking things off, eat real food.
Eat real food. But when I say food and fuel is one of those 4 components, I mean also supplements, really basically anything that you put into your body. And I think supplementation is important and good and useful. I think that, everything's marketed as the next big thing that's going to change your life. And I think one of my great nutrition teachers said that the 2 great dangers of nutrition are 1, thinking it does nothing, and 2, thinking it does everything. It does a lot, doesn't do everything. You're not going to, and people ask me all the time, well, what supplements should I take? And I'm always thinking most people don't have a high pill tolerance. I take 58 things a day. I'm nuts. I mean, I have 2 bags of this, so you probably do too. But most people will take 3 things. And when they ask me what those 3 things should be, I'll say magnesium, vitamin D, and omega-3. And if you're willing to take a 4th, a good multiple, like Life Extension's 2 per day, because it has the right amount of zinc and selenium, which most of them don't. So with 4 things a day, you can make a big difference in the lives of most people. Most people do not get enough vitamin D. They certainly don't get enough magnesium. And they definitely don't get enough omega-3. So even though I do have a individualistic way of looking at supplementation, I do think that in terms of return on investment, Those three are going to give you a lot. So will black seed oil, by the way. I'm very hot on that these days. There's some really good research coming in on its metabolic effects. So I like that one as well. But if you want to move on to the next category.
I would love to. I would love to.
And it's just the answer is going to be just as simple, or the takeaway. And so the next category is exercise and movement. And, ever since I wrote my program, New You in 22, we've been hammering at this point that exercise and movement are not the same thing. Exercise is what you do when you go to the gym and you work out for half an hour. And that's great. And everybody should do that. But metabolically, that doesn't change very much. What changes metabolism overall is when you're constantly in motion. I don't sit down much. I mean, I walk everywhere, and I take phone messages walking up and down in my garden. I have a standing desk. I probably sit down less than 2 hours a day. So that's movement. Walking to the mailbox, walking to, up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, the daily movement stuff that you do, fidgeting. So all of that kind of movement stuff really, really does count. And you don't undo 8 hours of sitting and eating junk food by going to the gym and working out 45 minutes. You just don't. And so I think both exercise and movement are really important. And now we get to, well, what kind of exercise? And I'm going to give you the same basic kind of pare it down to its essential. Just move as much as possible. Every chance you get. One of the best hacks I ever heard, I was on a panel with a bunch of other experts, and I wish I could credit the guy who came up with this, but it's a very simple. He said, every so often when you're standing, do 15 air squats. Just 15 up and down, one up by the chair. Here's what happens. Lowers your blood sugar. Insulin resistance goes down because you're creating a demand for the insulin to take the blood sugar, and even if it's only 15 seconds long. Circulation improves. I mean, that's a 10-second exercise that anybody can do. We can just get up and do 15 squats while you're talking on the phone. You can even use, the table to hold on to it. It's not hard to do. So there's a lot of this where you can just incorporate movement in your daily life. And of course, exercise. I do that, I play tennis every day, and but if we were to try to pick one habit that would equal the kind of eat real food habit, and I believe that if they taught this in every elementary school and every kid learned this and did it, it would change the budget for healthcare by double-digit percentage, and it would put us up a number of notches. And that is, take a 20-minute walk after dinner. End of story. Anybody can do that. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require a 20-minute walk, preferably after dinner every day. You're going to see a major return on investment. And that's from somebody who has studied every exercise modality that ever came down the pike. And if you're looking at, you're advising people in their investments and saying this stock is going to return, the walk after dinner, that's your best return on investment. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do weights. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do. And what we have learned it is different in the field of movement and exercise. This is relatively new information. Is how important muscle really is. When when I was coming up, muscle was all about looking good at the beach, and I started as a trainer at Equinox. Everybody just wanted to look really great, and they thought that's all there was to it. But we now know, courtesy of Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, whose quote this is, muscle is the organ of longevity. Let's talk about why. What's the number one risk for death? Everybody thinks it's heart disease or breast cancer or one of these. It's not. It's frailty. People with muscle don't drop dead. They fall. People fall and they break a hip. You look like you're going to fall and break a hip? I don't look like I'm going to fall and break a hip. But somebody with no muscle, whose muscle has pretty much been eaten up by age and not doing anything to maintain it, is by definition more frail. And as Peter Attia points out in his book, that's your number one risk factor for dying. So you need to hold on to muscle. And we did not know this 10 years ago. We certainly didn't know it when I started 35 years ago. It was just a vanity thing. Oh, it's nice to have muscle and you look good in the magazines and things like that. But nobody talked about it in terms of longevity. But in fact, without that muscle, there's no longevity. You're just a very frail old person that's waiting to die. And there's even a disease, a medical condition called sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle over years, and we can't have that. Yeah. So two things came out of that in terms of like to-dos. One is we got to do more weight training. We got to do some kind of resistance training. And two is we need to be eating more protein. Our protein recommendations from the government, big surprise, the government got it wrong. I can't believe it. The 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight comes out to less than a half a gram of protein per pound. It's not enough. It just is not enough. So, a lot of protein experts now are talking about 100 grams a day. Peter Attia says at least 100. Esther Blum, who's one of the great experts on menopause and women's health, 100 grams a day for all her clients. So we need more protein, and we need to keep our muscle, and we need to take a walk after dinner.
I love this. It's so rich. Exercise and movement. And understanding there's a distinction, and also there's crossover here as well.
Oh yeah.
And we want to have multiple flavors. Now, since I have you here, since I have Sensei here, I want to ask you about this because hearing about moving more, it sounds good. People get inspired. Like I want to move more. Well, why would they? Everything is so convenient now, Jonny. When you're coming up, you don't got DoorDash. You don't got the dating apps. Like you had to go out in the streets to find your lady. All right. There's so much convenience. All right. Even the procurement of our food. Everything is so simple. Why on earth would we be moving more if we don't have to?
Maybe because we want to live longer and better. I don't know.
But just a wild guess. How do we do it if it's so convenient? If I'm comfy, why am I going to get up and move around like Jonny said?
I think that I think we have to back up a step and talk about the psychology of this. There's always a trade-off between convenience and quality. Every time you make food more convenient, you probably make it less qualitatively good. You put it in a package, you get it in a microwave, you can have it in 2 seconds, and it's not quite the same. So there's always this trade-off, and it really requires a little bit of looking in the mirror and deciding what's of importance to you in your life. And DoorDash is very convenient. It's also expensive, and it also sucks because you're basically getting fast food that's prepared. And, even if it comes from a great restaurant, they throw it together. It looks like fast food. It is experienced as fast food. You're eating it out of a container while you're watching TV. I mean, all of these things that could be really nourishing, not just the food, but the experience of eating and the community of eating. They're all gone. You're just eating out of containers, and you're paying a ton of money for it. So the convenience thing is always going to be this shiny thing that grabs at you that we're attracted to. Of course, we'd like to have everything just delivered to us, but what is the cost of that? And I think that people have to actually look seriously at that. And it's very difficult in a society that so values immediate gratification. You want it now, and we don't really care if it's that good. We just want it. And maybe it requires a little bit of the stuff I'm going to talk about in the next two categories of like really some self-examination about what do you really care about and what are you willing to take a stand on for yourself.
What are some things that can be triggers for us to move? Do you have a pet, Jonny?
Do I have a pet?
Yeah.
I have a dog. I don't consider him a pet, but he's my
Your companion. Do you have a furry companion? No disrespect.
I have a furry companion. I do indeed, and I've had them for 30 years.
What?
I've had not the same ones. I mean,
okay,
we live with dogs.
I was about to say what do you know that we don't know?
No. We have two. Okay. We have two dogs. She had one.
So having a pet that's going to be an automatic movement prompt.
It's one of the big advantages. It's not the only one. There are many, many more to having an animal in your life or more, but that's definitely one of them.
Okay. Are there any other things? Like, I'm wondering what gets Jonny up and moving. Like, what is the catalyst? Not just the mindset piece, but just practical things.
I have to force myself sometimes to do it.
Come on.
But, I believe that we treat our own word the way we treat the word of our friends. So if we had a friend who constantly said, I'll meet you at 1:30, and they constantly come late. It's either the dog ate my homework or there was traffic or I got a flat tire or something. After a while, you stop believing them. You just don't, oh yeah, I'm definitely be there on time. I'm definitely going to be there. And they're not, right? I mean, because you basically make predictions based on the past. Well, we do the same thing with ourselves. If you hear yourself saying, today's the day I'm going to stop smoking enough times and it doesn't happen, you stop believing your own word. So in my coaching, when I work with clients, one of the first things I work on is rehabilitating their word so that they get to believe that if I say it, it is going to happen. If I say it, it's law in the universe. And I used to start very, very simply with that. I'd have clients who were terrified of the gym. I'm thinking of one celebrity client whose name you would know in a minute and whose songs we all sing. And this person really was, he's in early 90s. You go into Equinox, everybody's in spandex, everybody's working on, it's a meat market. And of course it's intimidating as shit. So what I used to do with her, I pick her up at her house. We walk into the gym. We'd have a smoothie, and we'd walk out. We'd come back the next day. We'd walk around for a minute, and we'd walk out. And I literally did behavioral modification, systematic desensitization. She'd stand on the treadmill. We'd talk for a couple minutes out. And she would get used to doing this, right? We have to do that with our own words. So you start with things you can't fuck up. I will have a glass of water when I wake up. You put the damn water on the bedpost and you drink it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, right? What happens is your mind is very digital. It's not analog. It's not, well, and under these it only knows success, failure, yes, no. So if you set the goal, I'm going to drink that glass of water, that gets coded as a win. And what I was doing with the client that I was bringing is I'm coding wins. Win, success, win. So when people came into the gym and they had this Arnold Schwarzenegger, the encyclopedia of bodybuilding, they were going to do this 2-hour workout and they would get to 20 minutes and they'd leave. That's always as coded as a failure. And people don't do what they fail at. They don't like doing what they fail at. They don't like failing. But if instead of setting that goal, you set a 2-minute on the treadmill goal, you may think, your conscious mind may think, well, that doesn't count. Yeah, it does count because what you're doing is you're tricking your mind into saying, he does what he says he's going to do. I do what I say I'm going to do. And you take a stand that is independent of how you fucking feel in the moment. It's not about your feelings.
Yeah.
It's about, do you take a stand? I've dated single women with kids. And I notice how they get up at ridiculous hours, get the kids ready, drive them to school, and you know what? They do it whether they feel like it or not. They do it because they said they were going to do it and because that's their agreement that they made with themselves and the universe and the kid. That's how we have to treat ourselves. You do it not because you feel like it. You're not going to feel like, I don't feel like going for walks every day with the dog. But come walk time, I do it. Because I'm taking a stand for myself. That's how you deal with the convenience thing that's always pulling at you.
Amazing, amazing. You're getting to the heart of this matter. And by the way, you already mentioned a couple of prompts too, which is
Tell me.
After dinner. That's the prompt.
Oh, yeah.
Taking your animal companion, your furry companion for their walks. Phone rings, get on the phone, start moving around while you're taking your calls.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why anybody sits and has phone conversations. Walk around your kitchen. And mine is smaller than your room right here, and you can walk in circles. I do it.
Yeah. I love this. All right, so we've got 1 and 2 covered, and we've got
now
the
we
guru
got 3
here. So
3 and 4 coming.
Yeah, let's get into number 3.
So number 3, I would call as a general bucket relaxation and recovery. and that would include sleep. And I don't have to tell you, you are one of the experts in the field on sleep. You wrote a book on it. It's a great book, by the way. So let's start with sleep before we go into the larger category. It's sort of like the same as exercise and movement. It's like sleep is the thing we know, like exercise, but there's this larger category of relaxation and recovery. So I absolutely believe that sleep is incredibly underappreciated as an energy producer, as a mind modulator, optimism. When people sleep on things, it looks better in the morning. This is our language reflects how important that is. And we could talk, more than I do about it, all the neurochemical things that happen during sleep and all the biochemicals that are replaced and all the stuff that happens with the cleanup crew, the lymphatic system, or glyphatic system, all that stuff that happens in the brain when you clean out and take out the trash, autophagy. So there's a million things that happen during sleep that are incredibly important for energy, for outlook, for weight loss. I mean, what happened? Here's the connection to weight loss, because when I tell people about sleep, they usually go, their eyes glaze over. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it makes you fat. And they go, oh, how does that work? Well, here's how it works. When you're not sleeping enough, your body sees that as a stressor. So it releases cortisol. And cortisol, as we now know, because it's all over TikTok, cortisol puts on cortisol belly. It gives you cortisol face. It gives you cortisol butt. So this is a hormone that is very, very important for our survival. But when it's on all the time, it's our number one stress hormone. It disrupts our sleep. So the body sees that lack of sleep as a stressor, releases cortisol. One of cortisol's job is to put on belly fat. That's why they call it cortisol belly or stress fat. So we don't want that, right? We want to wake up refreshed. We want to get enough restful sleep, restorative sleep. If you use any of the wearables like the Oura, you know how much is deep sleep, how much is REM sleep. Deep sleep is associated, if you don't have enough deep sleep, it's associated with a higher risk for Alzheimer's. So sleep impacts your weight, your optimism, your joy, your engagement in the world. It's so important. But bigger than even sleep is the whole category of relaxation and recovery. Now, you know as a trainer that you don't build your biceps when you're doing bicep curls. You build them when they're building back up. After you actually tear down the muscle when you do that. There's some little micro tears in the actin and myosin filaments, and they get repaired through nourishment and recovery time. So recovery is where it's at. Now I'm going to tell you a story you're going to love. There's a Harvard, I think he's at one of the big hospitals in the Northeast, Jeffrey Rediger, and he is an MD with a master's in divinity from Princeton. So he's not a guy who doesn't understand, the spiritual element of stuff, but he's a hardcore scientist. And he had people saying to him, Jeffrey, you ought to investigate faith healing. They go down to Brazil, they get these, they meet some girl and they throw away their crutches. And he said, are you kidding me? A, it's all bullshit. B, even if it wasn't bullshit, I could never get a grant proposal approved for this. They would think I'm a quack. They would laugh me out of my position as chief psychiatrist at McLean, I think he was at. I'm not even interested in investigating this. And he had an oncology nurse who had been with him for 20 years who was very smart. And she said, Jeffrey, I know how you feel about this, but I think there's something there you should investigate. Long story short, he gets a grant, takes a year, and decides to investigate, quote unquote, miraculous healing, spontaneous remission. And he goes all over the place. And he comes back. He wrote a book about this. It's called Cured, by the way, highly recommended. But I'm going to give you the synopsis so you don't have to read it. Comes back and he says, I was right. 98% of it's total bullshit. But 2%'s not. And he found a few cases where they had actually documented. They had taken pictures. They had really, really a good chain of evidence. They had the pictures of the tumor, and 6 months later, there ain't no tumor, and the doctors are going, we don't know what the fuck happened, is basically what they're saying. So he said, now, we study very unusual people in other fields. We studied Tony Robbins and Bill Gates and Michael Jordan and all these high-performing people, not because we can do that, but we might be able to learn something from them. So maybe we should take a look at these very, very few people who legitimately made a tumor disappear. And this is what he found. In every case that was legitimate, these people had changed their lives. Now, some of them were barely literate. Some of them were PhDs. It had nothing to do with intelligence or even knowing that they were doing this. But when they thought they had 6 months to live, a lot of them quit their jobs. A lot of them dumped toxic relationships. A lot of them moved to places like Brazil or the Caribbean where they're in the sun and the whole life is different. And what he hypothesized from his very thorough study, which resulted in a very thick book, was that these people had learned to start spending time in the parasympathetic nervous system mode. So we have two divisions of the nervous system in the autonomic nervous system, and one is called sympathetic, one's called parasympathetic, and sympathetic is fight or flight, and parasympathetic is rest and digest. We spend 90% of our time in sympathetic nervous system mode. We got to get to this. We got to do this report. We got to take the kid to soccer practice. We got to do all this stuff. And that is very, very stressful. Cortisol levels are on the ceiling. This breaks down everything. This is so bad for our bodies. On the other hand, rest and digest is where all the good shit happens. This is where healing takes place. This is where energy is produced in the mitochondria. This is where detoxification takes place. In parasympathetic mode. And what these people had done unconsciously was they had allowed themselves to be in that mode. And what Jeffrey Rediger hypothesized was when you're constantly in cortisol mode, in sympathetic mode, your immune system is depressed. That's why marathoners get sick the week after their event, every single time. Because their immune system is depressed. And he hypothesized that once these people started spending time in that relaxation mode, their immune system woke up. And it said, wait a minute, I could have gotten rid of this thing. And now it's like you just woke up the police, and now they're doing a cleanup thing in the neighborhood. So this importance of spending some more time in a relaxed state, in a loving, kind, not too frenetic, not, crazy kind of state is so important. And you ask me, like, what do? I have a special hour I try to do every day. 20 minutes with the dog in the walk, 20 minutes of restorative yoga. By the way, the greatest thing you could do it isn't about stretching. It isn't about losing weight. It is totally about how do I get into parasympathetic mode for an hour. So I'll do 20 minutes of that and then I do meditation. That's my power hour for relaxation and recovery. But folks, this is one of the pillars. If you're not sleeping well, you don't have energy, your mind is constantly with brain fog and all, and you're running on empty and trying to get stuff done, waiting to exhale, take a breath and spend some time in that beautiful, relaxed rest and digest mode. And I think that's one of the keys.
Yeah. In this conversation about extending your lifespan, to think about sleep in this equation is revolutionary at this time in human history.
Well, you talked about it. You've talked about it for years.
Now, well, with that being said, hearing this from you, because one of the mantras in this modern culture is, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And the truth is...
That's idiot 80s. That's the what is it? The Wolf of Wall Street? Yeah. That's the coke addicts that are on Bear Stearns and stuff like that. I'll sleep when I'm dead. You'll be dead much sooner than you thought you were going to be.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's the thing. It's to associate with this in a very logical, that's the thing, this is very logical.
Yeah.
And so this isn't something that we evolved out of.
Yeah.
We need this in order for us to get into that anabolic state, the rest and recovery. And also bringing that outside as well, not just the time we're spending on our mattress at night, but also having those practices to be able to calm down and switch to that parasympathetic so that we can just get some more time healing.
Absolutely. You can do it with breathing exercises, things that you can do right, at your desk and stuff like that. There's so many different little hacks you can do with that. But pay attention to that part of it. It's just so critically important. It really is.
Well, we're at number 4 now.
Okay, and number 4 really does interact with the one we're talking about, with the relaxation and recovery. And I think the best way I can I think that number 4, what we're going to talk about now, which is communication, connection, and relationships, is probably the most important of the 4. And I'll give you my reasoning behind that. So we all know about Dave Asprey, Peter Attia, all these people who are going to live to 180. Dave says he's going to do 180. Peter wants to live to over 100. And Peter Attia, in his book, talks about the centenarian Olympics. How do we get to be a kick-ass 100-year-old? What is a kick-ass 100-year-old? And he said, well, let's be realistic. A kick-ass 100-year-old could walk to the corner with a farmer's carry, carrying 2 10-pound bags. He could put a small suitcase in the overhead compartment. He can walk unassisted. He could take groceries from the back of his trunk and take it into the house. It's a kick-ass 100-year-old, right? Somebody fully functioning. How can we be that? And Peter Attia, made a spreadsheet. He's very brilliant and he's very smart and he's a mathematician and, so he's a little obsessive. So you got to do this much balance, this much stability, this much weight training. Then you got to do, do the he does rucking where he puts the backpacks and do that much. And it's very complicated. So some researchers recently said, this is a great goal. We want to live to 100, want to be a kick-ass 100-year-old. Why don't we go meet some kick-ass 100-year-olds and ask them what the hell they do? Let's reverse engineer it. Let's go find a community where there's a lot of 100-year-olds and watch them and see what lessons we can learn. So they go to Sardinia, one of the 5 blue zones. And if you've never seen Sardinia, if you watched White Lotus the last season, it was shot in Sardinia, and you can look and see there's nothing but hills. You cannot walk out of your house to buy milk without walking 10,000 steps. So they went to Sardinia, where all these 100-year-old men live, the largest population of healthy 100-year-old men. And they wanted to see what lessons we could learn. And they came up with 3. And they're a little tongue-in-cheek. You have to adapt them to modern society. But these are the 3 lessons, and it will wrap up everything I'm talking about here. So the first thing that they noticed is that it would be a really good idea to live where there's lots of stairs. I mean, there's stairs. You see the hills, just watch White Lotus or look at some thing. It's stairs everywhere. Now, obviously, we're not going to all move, but the lesson that we can extract like that is to walk everywhere. Walk all the time. These guys are always in motion. They're not taking the subway. They're just always in motion. Second thing that they learned is, what do these guys do all day? Well, they're mostly shepherds in Italy, in Sardinia. So what are they doing? They're going up in the gorgeous Italian Alps, in the hills, where, by the way, subconsciously we're getting information from nature all the time. That's why there's such a thing as ecotherapy, the benefits of being outdoors, of watching greenery. And that's part of the thing about walking 20 minutes. It's not just about burning calories. It's about all of that information that you get, subconsciously, about balance and harmony and nature and eternity, all that good stuff, right? You're getting that. So they're out there in the hills, and they're spending their time with one of the sweetest and most docile animals on the planet, sheep. Think about what's going on in their brain and their neurochemistry compared to, say, an EMT worker or a cop or someone who sees the dregs of society doing violent things, and that's in their mind all day. And these guys are like, they're in heaven. They're in idyllic, beautiful pastures with gorgeous little animals that are sweet. So the second lesson was, spend as much time as you can around docile animals. Well, you extrapolate that. It's like, be around things that bring out your kindness and your softness and your generosity and your appreciation of nature. Because what that does to your neurochemistry has major effects on your physiology, major. What you think about, what you give psychic energy to, has an enormous effect on the rest of you. And the third lesson And this was like in real estate where they say the three most important things in real estate are location, location, and then also location. This was like that. This was so far above the other two that it just left them in the dust. And the number one longevity tip that they learned from the people in Sardinia was make your family and your friends your number one priority. Full stop. And this has been shown in every major study, including the famous happiness study that's going on right now at Harvard. It's in its fourth generation. It started in 1936. They've been following people for, I don't know, as many years as from 1936 to now, to see what they do and how they live. And they've been tracking happiness and health and vitality. And without a doubt, the number one predictor of that is relationships, connection, and community. And when I do private coaching now, a little sort of an artisan practice, 1 or 2 clients a week, we go over their cholesterol tests and whatever else they want to talk about. It's basically a strategy session for life, but it starts with nutrition and cholesterol and always winds up being other stuff as well, as you and I know. And one of the things I leave them with is they come in very confused. The cholesterol tests are all over the place. The doctor doesn't know how to interpret it. They don't know they're not getting the right test. They don't even know what ApoB is. And, we talk about all that stuff. And those are risk factors. But what I say to them, this is my message to every client, is that your health is like a bank account. And you will make some withdrawals and you will make some deposits. And the trick is the same as with a bank account. You want to make more deposits than you make withdrawals. So some of these cholesterol tests are withdrawals. Sometimes you have a high LP little a. You can't do it. It's genetic. It's withdrawal. Or you do an all-nighter, and that's really bad on your metabolism. It's a withdrawal. But many of my clients, probably the people we know in common, are making this huge deposit and they don't even realize it and they don't even appreciate it. So I always ask them, so what's your family life? Oh, then they light up. Then all the stuff goes away. Oh, my kids, you can't believe we're going rowing this weekend. We try to go to Cabo every year and I love my wife. Once they start talking, I said, okay, that is a bigger deposit in your health bank account than any of these risk factors that we're talking about. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't fix them. We don't want to ignore a high, count on your ApoB or a high particle test or any of the other cholesterol red flags or any liver. We don't want to ignore them. But dude, look at the context. Look at the forest. You've got the big one handled. And people, sometimes I've seen them cry in sessions because they never thought of it that way, that they're doing this wonderful thing. I mean, you do it every day. You have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful family. We were very lucky that way. But those things, we can't discount how we get so much in the details of what kind of exercise you're doing, what supplements you're taking. What's your connection to your community in your life, and in your life, and your relationships, and the people that you love and that love you? Because, dude, that's where it's at. Barbara Bush, who was married to the original George Bush, who nobody remembers her, but the W's father was president for 4 years, and he had a wife, Barbara Bush, and she gave a very famous commencement speech at Wellesley University. It's an all-women's college. Very famous speech in which she said, not one of you will ever, on your deathbed, ever regret not making a certain deal or not putting a certain business forward, or what you will regret is not spending enough time with the people that you love, with your family and friends. And that's true dat, man. That's really where it's at. People ask me on podcasts, what is your secret? To my tennis group. We got a group of 20 people who play tennis. We're on a group text. We talk to each other every day. We have lunch with each other. We find out what the others are doing. We make jokes. We play in the park, and there's usually more of us than there are courts, so we sit on the side and we talk and we kibitz. That's the secret, man.
Yeah.
That is the secret.
Yeah. Man.
And you may not play tennis, so you find your tennis group. Find your equivalent of that.
Yeah.
Because it makes life. There's no point to longevity if you're not having a great life.
Yeah. That's one of the big takeaways today. Find your tennis group.
Find your
This
tennis
might be
group.
roller skating, might be hula hooping, might be
Could
art.
be bridge. I don't care what it is. Find a group of people you can connect with and relate to. And by the way, when they talk about this, they talk about something called soft connections, because some people might say, I don't have any friends. My friends are all dead. Soft connections are the checkout person at Whole Foods that you say hi to every day. The woman that just got her nails done, you go, oh, nice nails. The little interactions that you have with people that are very casual, they count. When they're figuring out, like, what is the effect of social connections, they count. I met a guy who was at Ralph's, checkout guy, and something told me he doesn't look like a Ralph's employee. I mean, he's not, like, he's just helping everybody. And what do you do? He said, oh, I'm a volunteer. And somebody else, you volunteer to work at a job that they pay for? And I'm thinking, that's the smartest guy I've met in a long time. He's retired. He has nothing to do. He comes in here and he helps people and he connects with them, and he's just added 10 years to his life. Who's the stupid one?
Yeah. Man, I love sitting with you. Truly. Like, this social bank account piece, this is invaluable. And just in closing, just to encapsulate that last point, for those people that are like, I understand the value of that, but I don't have it. It is moments like this, because I didn't have mentors in my physical world, right? And so I started to learn from people virtually and attending events and just getting outside of my normal environment where I might have felt isolated. And just those little steps, like you said, those little small interactions adding to that social bank account. And so now to be able to sit here with you, to have you in the room with me, this is a minor miracle, truly, in my life. And for all of us, I think the number one catalyst is our intention about it, first and foremost. And find your tennis group, all right? They
glad
exist.
you like that. Thank you.
I love that. They exist, or if the group isn't already put together, put them together.
Put them together.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, my guy, is there a best place for people to follow you?
Instagram is good.
Instagram, what's your handle?
At Jonny Bowden, no H in Johnny, Jonny.
That's right.
I'm doing, mainly now, I'm doing consulting with natural products companies and this artisan coaching, which I just love doing. I used to, when I was doing nutrition counseling in the 90s, I hated it because food diaries. I mean, how boring are food diaries? And everybody who was doing that's any good, in my opinion, has gone on and realized it ain't about food diaries. It's about your life. It's about the stand you take for the things you believe, like what we were talking about. It's about the glass ceilings that you need to break through, some of which are of your own making. So it's about your life. It's not about just the foods you eat. And I hated doing that, and I stopped doing it. And then a couple of years ago, I had a lot of requests for private coaching, and I decided if I do it the way I like to do it, it's not going to be a drag. And so now I do it the way I like to do it. I do one session. I'm not looking for a client base. I like to do a couple people a week, and that's it. And we literally look at their life. And we often start with cholesterol because that's what I'm known for, so they come to me with that. But it's always bigger than that. It's always the other factors and the stress alone, which can make a difference. So I love doing that kind of coaching. And you can find me online and book a time with me if you like what you hear.
Amazing. So we got the social media. So is there a website?
JonnyBowden.com, JONNY.
Perfect. Okay. Well, again, this has been a highlight of my week.
Oh,
and I
man.
mean that.
You say that to all the guests.
No. Man, you're something else. And
Thank you.
It is just, as soon as you step in the room, you make things different in the most amazing way. You can't help it. You can't shake it off of you. I was telling you before we got started,
So kind of
you have the glow.
Thank you, man.
And I'm grateful for you. I appreciate you so much.
I'm grateful for you.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
It's now been 50 years since the running boom, and not many people have lost weight engaging in a running program. It's not a very good choice of weight loss strategies. It still has a very high injury rate. Like 50% of all people who call themselves runners get injured every year. And at any one point in time, 25% of everyone who claims to be a runner is injured.